Hello, everybody. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We're going to talk all things Mississippi State and Ole Miss for the next half hour or so. We'll wrap up spring football, wrap it up for the Rebels. We're kind of in the middle of it with Mississippi State. We have medicated Logan Lowery with us. Logan, what's going on, man?
Doing good. I woke up with a little bit of a migraine this morning, but Parrish cracked that whip and he had me on the air. So we're doing the show. In fact, I've actually got to be up. I've got to be Ben Hallen's having his year-end press conference here in about an hour. So we've got to get the show in before I head off to campus and take care of a little rat killing over there. But you know, it's time to do the show, Parrish.
It is. You know, rat killing, man. You've been watching too many Nick Saban YouTube videos there, man. Everything's rat poison over there with those guys. So we'll try and stay away from the rat poison here. And, you know, if we kill any rats, we'll just push them in the corner or around back. Maybe you won't see those either. Hey, folks, before we get too far in the program, I want to remind you about other Daily Journal productions to look for. Be sure to check out The Memo with Chris Kiefer and Emma Crawford Kent every Wednesday. Excuse me, that's Thursday. That's a Thursday production. It's Prep Rally that's on Wednesday. So check out The Memo on Thursdays, all things Northeast Mississippi. And then start your week with Prep Rally on Wednesday for all your high school sports needs. Another solid production there from the Daily Journal. Look for Dalton Middleton and Brad Locke in that. They'll get you up to speed on the high schools. And Logan and I are here with you every week, Thursday or Friday, depending on schedules for double coverage. Logan, let's talk about spring football a little bit. The Rebels wrapped it up last week, and I put a photo on Twitter as the Grove Bowl was getting started of the Grove Bowl crowd. And I use the word crowd loosely because there was almost no one there. Now, that didn't strike me odd because it was 36 degrees and raining, in addition to other things going on in and around Oxford. But that picture really grew legs, man, and took off on Twitter. And I think everyone from the SEC plus Memphis chimed in and made fun of the Rebels there for that lack of a crowd. But it was an interesting day nonetheless. And, of course, it's always good to bring spring drills to a conclusion. Did the Rebels get better running the ball and stopping the run? I think those are the two big storylines of spring for Ole Miss. And, you know, I think they'll be better. I think they'll be better against the run. They gave up about 245 yards a game on the ground last year. Part of me says they'll be better because they can't be worse, but you always get in trouble when you make statements like that. I think they have so many new faces and young talent at linebacker that I think someone will emerge and give them some help there. The number one candidate would be Josh Clark, who ran with the first team for the second half of spring drills, kind of quick and rangy, physical guy. But there are others there with Mohamed Sanago and Zy Baker, just a lot of bodies there and others coming in the signing class. So I think they're going to have so many to choose from there that someone is going to emerge. I think that'll happen at linebacker. I think they'll be better. The key for this group really improving will be if Dietrich Ring-Dukes is as improved as Wesley McGriff says. He has sung the praises, the Ole Miss defensive coordinator has, of Dietrich Ring-Dukes. Says he is very much a leader, is really has become a more physical hitter. He's not a guy that's going to help him in pass coverage. So when an offensive coordinator can isolate Dietrich Ring-Dukes in pass coverage, that coordinator will have an advantage. But if Ring-Dukes can become a solid tackler in the box and make plays there, that also will help these linebackers improve. And improvement at this position is going to be the first step in improvement against the run. So what did we see in the spring? We saw the running game reel off some big runs every now and then. I saw more improvement, I thought, along the defensive front, the front seven, in stopping the run, slowing them down. You know, you might see Scotty Phillips every now and then break off a 25-yard run, but more often you saw 3 or 4 yard runs, 2 yards. I think they got a little better in stopping the run defensively, but it's spring football, so it always comes with an asterisk. When you're practicing against yourself, you really don't know. It's hard to tell. Now, flip side of the ball, if you're better against the run and you're stopping the run, well, is that a cause for concern in your running game? I think there is a cause for concern in the running game for Ole Miss right now. This can be a very explosive offense. The wide receivers are very good. The first line, we'll talk about the depth here in a minute. First line receivers are very good. Jordan Tiamo is going to be very good at quarterback. The running game is a question mark. The best case scenario for Ole Miss will be for Devon Penniman to come back healthy and come back and show the form that he did in the last 2 games last year when he was running hard, getting yards after contact, breaking tackles, and was just a much more physical back. That wasn't the way he was for most of last season, but he had kind of found himself when he dislocated his knee against Texas A&M. So the recovery is okay. It's on schedule, but there's a question mark there. Eric Swinney has had 2 major injuries. He ran first team at running back here in the spring, but he has never really shown the form that he did in the spring of 2016 when he was coming off the stress fracture in the foot, had a really good spring, very physical back at that time, very a loud win the collision kind of back in that spring training in 2016. Then the first carry of that season for him at Florida State, he tears an ACL. Now trying to come back from 2 major injuries, he has not returned to the form that he showed earlier back in 2016 in the spring. So can Devon Penniman do that? That will be a big question. If he can, then that allows Scotty Phillips to maybe be your number 2 back. I thought he did some really good things. The spring was big for him coming over from Jones Junior College. Twice a 1,000-yard rusher at Jones. He showed some elusiveness, showed some swivel between the tackles, and I think he can help this team. Swinney's going to help this team too, even if he's not all the way back to the form he has shown earlier, the form he showed in high school when he was recruited as one of the top 15 backs in the country. But collectively, I think they'll be able to get some things done. Isaiah Woolard had a good spring as well, but this group will be its best if Penniman can come back and run like he was running late last season. If they can do that and have a solid and consistent running game to complement the passing game, that's when this offense will be at its best. Mississippi State is not as far along in spring drills. They're in the rearview window for the Rebels right now. Logan, I'll come back and talk about those receivers in a little bit. Tell me what you know about the Bulldogs so far.
Well, I learned a little bit about them this past Saturday. I mean, so far in spring practices, number one, I've been out of town with women's basketball for a few of those practices. But even when I'm here in town and able to watch some spring practices, you can't see but so much. Only the first 6 periods are open to the media. The whole thing is closed to the public, but we're able to watch them stretch and watch them run through some individual drills. So, there's only just so much you can learn. You can kind of see how they I guess look in a uniform basically, but you're not seeing a whole lot of team activities. But this past Saturday, State held its first scrimmage, and it was the first real look at this team. And granted, Nick Fitzgerald is not 100%, so he got out there and did a little 7-on-7 type stuff. But when it got time to actually scrimmage, it was Keaton Thompson that was getting all those reps. He was the quarterback for 11 out of those 16 drives this past Saturday. He led them on 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals on those 11 drives that he was out there. So, five out of the 11 drives they were able to score on. He threw 3 interceptions on that day. 2 of those were tip passes that were picked off. It really wasn't on him. One of those was on him. So, but it's just kind of maturation of this offense. It's a brand new offense that they're all learning. What I was surprised about was how much they were throwing the ball downfield and how much they were throwing the ball to the tight end. And that's just kind of the subtle changes. Formationally, they look a lot like what Dan Mullen ran. It's a spread offense. It looks a lot like, they've been running for the last 9 years. But like I said, they're throwing the ball a lot more vertically, and they're getting the ball to the tight end a whole lot more. And those are the changes that I've seen. But, in these early scrimmages, Parrish, you know from watching spring ball, you see the defense take shape a little bit more quickly than the offense does, especially when there's a new, the newness factor in there too. I mean, it's a brand new defense for them. There's some guys that did not play this past Saturday. Jeffrey Simmons didn't go. Nick Fitzgerald didn't go. Jamal Peters had a death in the family. He was not out there. Marquise Spencer was, had some family matters. Stephen Guidry, the number one JUCO receiver in the country, he missed all of last week, but he's back now, and all those guys are back out there practicing now. So I believe they're all expected to go this upcoming Saturday when they scrimmage for the second time. But that's kind of what I was able to see. You couldn't really tell a whole lot. It was a lot of mix of everything. The defense looked good. The defense looked better than the offense, and we'll see them gradually progress as they build up towards that spring game. But second scrimmage is Saturday, spring game next Saturday. We'll learn a whole lot more over the next couple of weeks, maybe what this Mississippi State team is going to look like.
Back at Ole Miss a little bit, I want to talk about the wide receivers. There is so much talent there along the front line of receivers, as we mentioned earlier. That's really a position that Hugh Freeze stressed in recruiting and came away with guys like DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown, both of whom may likely be gone after this season. For sure, Brown will be, and Metcalf, he may have more of a decision to make. So this recruiting class right now has been about rebuilding at that position. And, of course, Matt Luke was able to sign a couple of four-star guys who will be on campus in August, or actually before, but they'll be around for August practice, Miles Battle and Elijah Moore. But also an early enrollee in DeMarcus Gregory, kind of a three-star recruit. An interesting story, Logan, in that he missed his entire senior season of high school with an ACL tear. So, his recruiting was done only on his junior production, what he was able to achieve to that point. And that's a big season for a lot of kids anyway, but he did not have an opportunity to increase his stock at all in his senior year. Some schools dropped off, but a lot of schools did not, and Ole Miss did not. And I'll tell you, DeMarcus Gregory right now was basically held out of spring. He went through a little non-contact stuff and things like that, but he looks the part. I think he's someone who at 6'2", 210, in that range, 205, just looks like a guy that can add weight to his frame and really help this team. So we'll see. But there are second level receivers that you're going to have to watch this season, because they are the future for Ole Miss at this position. And the future could be as soon as next season with a complete sweep among those wide receivers. A.J. Brown almost certainly will leave after this season, his junior year. DeMarcus Lodge is a senior. DK Metcalf, who knows? But there will be a changing of the guard at wide receiver, and a lot of young guys to keep an eye on this season for Ole Miss. Another one who is not a young guy but could still help this team is walk-on Floyd Allen, a junior college kid, 5'11", upper 100s. But he's a guy that has really impressed Jacob Peeler, the wide receivers coach. And Allen was injured much of spring, didn't get to see a lot of him, but don't be surprised if you see that name get in the mix a little bit with the wide receivers at Ole Miss. Jordan Tiamu at quarterback, a solid spring, had what you would expect for a returning starter. And this was big for Tommy. Okay, this was big. The fact that Shea Patterson was not there meant there was no quarterback controversy, and Jordan Tiamu needed these reps. He needed a spring as the unchallenged number one, because he only started 5 games last year. There's still a lot in this offense that he has to experience and become comfortable with, and he was able to do that this spring. So I think he'll be on good footing and will have a solid year as well. Lots of good things on that offense if they can answer the questions in the running game.
Yeah, and I guess switching over to baseball, that's where I was Saturday. I was at the football scrimmage, and I missed the first part of that. They ended up having a Saturday doubleheader because the weather here, I'm sure it was up in Oxford and Tupelo as well, just lousy weather on Friday. Turned off really, really cold on Saturday, but they were able to get a doubleheader in at Dudy Noble. I missed about the first 7 innings of that first game on Saturday while I was over there covering the football scrimmage, and apparently that's when all the fireworks were. I think it was 13-3 already, even when I got into the stadium. So the ball game was pretty, and I was getting score updates while I was at the football scrimmage, and I was very, very surprised by that. I mean, Mississippi State, most of the season has had trouble scoring runs. They haven't really had trouble getting guys on base. They just haven't been able to get those clutch hits, and I think Ole Miss helped them. You know, from what I was able to gather, Ole Miss helped them out with some of those runs early on in that ball game, and were able to get some momentum off of that and get some confidence, and you know, everything just started to snowball in that first game. Ryan Rollison got Ole Miss back on track in game 2. You know, it looks like he pitched one of his better ball games in that game 2, and we were able to even the series there. And then it was kind of anybody's game when Sunday rolled around, and it was Sunday's game was about as good a baseball game as I've seen all season. It was just one of those back and forth games where, you know, the momentum shifted several times. You know, there were clutch decisions to be made, some right, some wrong, and you know, it was just a great baseball game, a back and forth. You could tell both teams really wanted to win that ball game, and you know, it looked like Ole Miss was going to hang, or it looked like Mississippi State was going to hang on there. Cole Gordon had pitched a couple of good innings out of the bullpen, and they left him in there to pitch the 9th inning, trying to close that thing out. Ole Miss got to him, and were able to take the lead there in the 9th inning, and the Mississippi State answered right back and took the lead up. Same thing, you know, Ole Miss, Parker, I think if I'm saying his name, Carici, is that how you say it?
Parker Caraci.
Okay, whatever. Yeah, him, the guy with the beard, the guy that's been so good all season. They pitched him, I think, about 4 innings, and you could tell that was more than probably what he was accustomed to or was sort of built for. And Mississippi State was able to get to him too there in the 9th inning, tied the game back up. Ends up going 11 innings, and you know, a local guy for us, Parrish. You know, Luke Alexander. You like to see those local guys do good. They kind of sell more papers when those local guys do good, and
helps write the game story.
Exactly. Belmont native Luke Alexander hits a 2-run homer in that game. You know, Jake Mangum was a catalyst for Mississippi State all weekend and has been all season. But he goes 5 for 5 in that game on Sunday, Parrish, and you know, I think he scored 4 of the runs for Mississippi State on that day. And of course, he was on base when Luke Alexander hit the 2-run homer, the walk-off to win the series. It was Mississippi State's first SEC series win of the season. It was huge for him from a confidence standpoint. State's now won, I think, 4 or 5 out of their last 6, 4 out of their last 5, whatever it is. They're taking some momentum down to Auburn this weekend. They just destroyed Alabama State down in Montgomery last night. I think scored 7 runs in the first inning of that ball game. So the offense is rolling a little bit. Seemed like it's got a little bit of confidence. We'll have to see how that faces up, because Auburn's got a heck of a pitching staff down there with Butch Thompson. So we'll have to see how they do this weekend. But Mississippi State's got a little bit of momentum. They're still down there in the cellar of the SEC standings, but still have a chance to move up. But they have a gauntlet schedule left. I mean, pretty much anybody that's made some noise in the SEC this season, State still got them left on the schedule to play. So it's going to be a tough slate to finish it out, but we'll have to see how they do.
Logan, I was not surprised that Mississippi State won the series. I thought at number 3, Ole Miss, even at number 5 right now, is probably a little overranked. I think this is a really good team. But you know as well as I do, when you're a beat writer, you watch these teams, you know the flaws. You see where they need to improve. And one of the things that the MSU series did for Mike Bianco was kind of spur him on, I think, to find some help for that bullpen. He's really looking for 1 or 2 more arms to put in there on the weekend. And, you know, maybe that's Greer Holston. Maybe there's a bigger role there. I think a couple of guys to keep an eye on also are Max Chofie and Austin Miller, a freshman and a sophomore, guys who have pitched well in bullpen appearances in the midweek. Miller had 2 1/3 scoreless against Southern Miss on Tuesday night in Pearl, and 11-3 Ole Miss win. And that was the team I have seen more often. A little better on offense in that Southern Miss game, and the bullpen was able to hang some zeros up. They got a nice start from Houston Roth in that game, and just they were better on the mound against a very good Southern Miss team. Now, that being said, you have seen them as well, Logan. Southern Miss is a very strong offensive team, but they're not at the top of their game right now. And Scott Berry was talking about that after the game. They're 5-5. He said, well, that's mediocre baseball. And that's kind of where Southern is right now, 5-5 in their last 10 and trying to find themselves. But that is a very talented lineup that hits really well. So it was a nice bounce back win for Ole Miss offensively and on the mound. Played well defensively, too. Had a really nice game at shortstop from freshman Anthony Servideo, who was taking over for a night for Gray Kessinger while he sits out and just rests a hamstring. So, all in all, a good night for Ole Miss, a bounce back game to take into this weekend's series at Vanderbilt. It doesn't get any easier. Vanderbilt will pitch it well. They're hitting at about 274. And look, it's Vanderbilt. It's going to be a good team and a big challenge for Ole Miss to see if they can bounce back after their first series loss of the year and pick up a road series win at Vanderbilt. Those games that's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday series. The Sunday game's a little bit later start, 4:00 game, because got to accommodate ESPNU there. So anyway, a little bit later start on Sunday for Ole Miss at Vanderbilt. But all in all, we were talking before the program, Logan. This looks like a team that, if it answers a few questions, it could make a deep postseason run. It certainly could put itself into the host conversation. That's usually how deep postseason runs begin. We'll see what that bullpen gets done this week. If what I've seen from them mostly, Logan, is they can be pretty effective. The first game in a series, maybe the second, but when you start calling on too many of those guys right now for a second appearance in a series, that's when they start to have trouble. I mean, we're talking right now really about Dallas Woolfolk, Will Etheridge, Will Stokes. Those are kind of the three that Bianco is using to try and get the game into the hands of Caracci, who has been pretty dependable. And you hit the nail there on the head a few minutes ago. When you ask him to go 4 innings, he's not built that way. He's been very good for an inning or two. And, very good because he's throwing strikes and he has a lot of strikeouts. Doesn't have very many walks on the year, but he has a high opponent's batting average. I think going into that Mississippi State series, opponents were hitting probably about 240 against Caracci, which is pretty high. But the reason is, he's keeping the ball in or near the strike zone. And so, guys are going to get pitches to hit every now and then. And he throws so hard that when he does give up a hit, it's likely to be a double because that ball's going to have some pop when it comes off the bat. So anyway, Ole Miss at Vanderbilt this weekend. We'll see if the Rebels can bounce back. They still have not lost back-to-back games this season, but we'll see if they can keep from losing back-to-back series.
Yeah, and switching over a little bit of basketball news. Mississippi State got signed a big man that was previously at Arizona State. He went out into California and played some JUCO ball. Jethro, and I've yet to figure out Tashumpa. I can't figure out how to say his last name yet.
I think it's Bodine. Is it Bodine? Yeah. Jethro Bodine?
I'm just going to call him Jethro, but he's a 6'10" shot blocker down low. He committed back in February, signed on Wednesday. Got him, and they also got some good news that Nick Weatherspoon is going to come back for his sophomore season. So some encouraging news after some bad news last week from Mississippi State, with all the players leaving. He had 3 players declare early for the NBA draft. 2 more announced their transfer over the weekend. So some positive news for Mississippi State men's basketball. And then, of course, tonight, the WNBA draft. Victoria Vivians was invited to New York. She's going to be there. She's expected to be drafted. We'll don't know about some of those other seniors on Mississippi State's roster, if they'll be selected or not. But Victoria Vivians is expected to go pretty high in that draft and got that invite to New York. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And another football practice this afternoon, Parrish. After got Ben Howland here coming up with a press conference in a little bit, and another football practice this afternoon.
Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage. We thank you for clicking in with us today. Be sure to check out the Memo, our news podcast every Thursday, and Prep Rally coming to you every Wednesday with Brad Locke and Dalton Middleton. Logan and I will be back with you next week for another round of Double Coverage.